Patriots Daily is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
So news broke earlier today that Mike Vrabel was fired as head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Had a great first 4 seasons, winning seasons, won Coach of the Year just 2 seasons ago. But the past 2 years, he did have losing seasons. A lot of that was due to the roster situation in Tennessee. And reportedly, he did not get along with general manager Rand Carthon. And it seemed like the Titans decided to go with the general manager and find a new head coach, rather than retain Vrabel and then just go out and find a new general manager, as it was Carthon's first season. And it was actually reported by Bleacher Report's Jordan Schultz yesterday that Vrabel would have had interest in returning to New England if he was released. So, with everything going on with Bill Belichick, it seems like Vrabel is at the top of a lot of people's head coaching candidates list. Obviously, he already said he might want to come back to New England. He referred to New England as we when he came back for the Hall of Fame speech. So, do you think that he should be the top candidate for New England as the potential head coaching replacement? And if Bill Belichick stays, do you still think there's a spot for him on the staff with Jerod Mayo already here and seeming like he might be the succession plan?
For Vrabel on the staff with Jerod Mayo?
Yes.
No, I think he's probably the top head coaching candidate right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'd assume, right? I mean, other than Belichick, if Belichick is gone.
Right.
I think it wasn't long ago where we were saying Mike Vrabel might be like one of the 2 or 3 best head coaches in football. That's what losing the last 2 years will do. But it was clear that it was not a functional relationship with the Titans general manager, and that things had just, he didn't have a good roster over there, and he deserves some of that blame for sure. But, I think you couldn't have drawn this up any better if you're the Crafts. This is like exactly the candidate who needed to shake free for them. I think if Vrabel wasn't available, that's when you really started getting into the territory of like, well, what is a better option for the Patriots? Like, is just handing over the keys to Jerod Mayo? Like, how is that an immediate upgrade? How does that get you to where you want to be right away? And then if it's not Jerod Mayo, what are your other options out there? And so I think that kind of fed into the notion of like, well, maybe the Crafts will think twice about this, and they'll ultimately retain Belichick because the backup options aren't any good. But with Vrabel coming free, I think changes all that. I think that would be an excellent hire for them. He should be the top candidate. And honestly, just personal feeling, like I think you got to do it. They got to pull the cord on Belichick. I know there are arguments for him staying, but I just think it's time. I think if Belichick was being honest, he probably believes it's time. Everyone believes it's time. And Mike Vrabel is the perfect replacement for a variety of reasons. I think they should just try and make this happen as soon as possible, even though I believe NFL rules would prevent it from happening like any sooner than January 22nd or so.
Right. And I will say, I've been a proponent for Jerod Mayo. I think maybe I'm just holding on to that leash just because I really like the idea of him becoming a coach. I feel like he's done so well in the capacity he's been in, his experience with the team, his experience outside of football. A lot of people tend to expect that Mayo is just going to be another Bill Belichick. I think that couldn't be further from the truth because he carries himself completely differently. And I feel like
business savvy, his business background, he's embraced analytics. Like he's kind of like a modernized Belichick in that regard. But I just think it's Vrabel's experience. Like, Jerod Mayo, I think, is going to be a great head coach one day, and there are some reports out there that the team feels this way, that it's just too early for him, that their ideal scenario was Belichick's going to coach here for a couple more years, break that record, then hopefully Mayo's ready. But right now, I might be too soon, but it's not too soon for Mike Vrabel.
And that's the thing. For me, it was, if the Crafts don't think Mayo's ready, then that's like done deal. If he's not in a position where, like you said, you want somebody who can turn this around quickly. And if that's not Mayo, I completely understand. I'm all for Vrabel. Maybe Mayo sticks around, gets an elevation or something. You also got DeMarcus Covington. It's a really great defensive staff. There's a lot of candidates to potentially. And also, we saw it reported that was Adam. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on. And thank you, Adam Peters, could potentially be handcuffed with Vrabel in a situation where that's a general manager who he does see eye to eye with. And if you can get a general manager and a head coach who are in lockstep to bring into your organization where you've got draft capital, you got money, you've got a really good defense, you have a good offensive line to start with. It still needs some pieces, but you have the capital to rebuild that side of the ball and make it look a lot different. I would agree. Honestly, you talked me into Vrabel even more. I'm kind of doing it about face, so I really like that perspective. Last thing before I get you out of here, another couple of reunions that have been linked to the Patriots. Ben Bowen reported today that Scott Pioli could be interested in coming back to the Patriots in a general manager position if Belichick stays, and Josh McDaniels could come back on the offensive staff if Bill Belichick stays. Now, the McDaniels part from Pioli makes sense. I don't love it because he still seems like a guy who would defer to Bill for the final.
Totally.
And, I don't know how much – it gives you a different perspective, I guess, but I don't know how much that really helps you. But with McDaniels, obviously did a great job. He's a great offensive coordinator. Nobody's doubting that. I think just on paper – he did do a better job than Bill O'Brien, although, Bill O'Brien in his one season had Hernandez and Gronkowski. That's a pretty good setup. But at the same time, if Belichick stays, does he fire Bill O'Brien and then say, all right, McDaniels, it's your ship again? Do they work together? Because that's a weird situation where it's two guys who have been on the team as coordinators and quarterbacks coaches, big personalities, big voices. What's your take on the McDaniels and the Pioli situation? Do you think they'd be a good fit? And for McDaniels specifically, how do you think that would even work?
Well, on Belichick potentially firing Bill O'Brien, the one thing there is we don't know his contract details, but I have to imagine, just given his background and pedigree and also how important it was for the Patriots to secure that hire last offseason, I bet he's a pretty well-paid assistant. And so it's usually not Belichick's MO to fire a guy, have him be on the books, even though they're separate books, and then go work for free somewhere else. I would just be surprised if they did that. But at the same time, it's how do him and McDaniels work together? Especially where all the stuff that we learned in the Herald story about the hierarchy with the offensive coaching staff with Will Lawing, or with Bill O'Brien at the top, then Will Lawing and Evan Rothstein, and how that kind of, sowed distrust with the other staffers and with some of the players not knowing what to do. Now you add Josh McDaniels in there. What's that dynamic like? I don't see how that could work. On paper, if you're building a Madden coaching staff, exactly. That's awesome. You win, but I don't see how that benefits anybody. But it would be fascinating to see if Vrabel's the head coach, what he would do, because he previously coached under Bill O'Brien. Is he going to come in and fire his old boss? And insert McDaniels. There's so many interesting former Patriot dynamics in play here with all this stuff that it's just going to be fascinating to see how it all shakes out.
The NFL season is wrapping up, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Yeah, bottom line, you got to maintain some health on your coaching staff, because the roster is one problem, but it got way worse when that report did come out and you were like, oh my God, it's completely an internal, I don't want to say nightmare, but it definitely wasn't good. And real quick, I am curious, because if Mike Vrabel does come in and replace Bill Belichick, he worked under Bill O'Brien. He was a linebackers coach for O'Brien for 3 years, then became his defensive coordinator. But you've also got Arthur Smith, who was just released by the Falcons and is on the market, who also worked for Mike Vrabel. So how do you think that would potentially work? And like you mentioned, O'Brien might have a contract that keeps him locked in. Do you think that maybe Vrabel tries to make it work where he brings in Arthur Smith in some capacity? Or do you think, he maybe gives Bill O'Brien the keys and says, hey, the offense is yours. I'm going to handle most of the defense and be the CEO who handles the players and everything. How would you see that potentially working out?
Well, that's a great question. The Arthur Smith angle is fascinating because, I bet Robert Kraft would like to do McDaniels. I he loves Josh McDaniels. He trusts Josh McDaniels. I bet Josh McDaniels would like to be here, all that stuff. But if are you going to hire Vrabel and then right from the get-go do but you can't hire your full staff. I'm going to control some of the staffs you hire. So I don't know. I think if you hire Vrabel, you have to say hire whoever you want. And then if I'm Mike Vrabel, he probably would go with Arthur Smith, right? That's the guy he knows, that he's comfortable with. But at the same time, it's reuniting with Josh McDaniels just makes so much sense. And I don't know where else Josh McDaniels could go unless he pairs up with Bill with the Chargers or something. So if Bill Belichick is here, I feel like McDaniels is going to be here one way or the other. We saw that report from Jeff Howe. But if Mike Vrabel's here, I don't know. I kind of like the Arthur Smith idea that you're floating. I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
And does Billy go out the door if that happens? Or do they try to make that work?
No, it's a lot of.
I put you on the spot here. I'll tell everybody. This was something I kind of came up with last minute, but it is fascinating.
I would say, no. If I gun to my head, I would say you hire Mike Vrabel, Bill O'Brien stays, and you give up Bill O'Brien the freedom to hire his full staff. Because I think Will Long was a good hire. You give Bill O'Brien the freedom to hire his full staff, and just go from there. That's what I think would happen. That's what I would do. But it all depends. Like, how does Mike Vrabel feel about it? I mean, he's not afraid to make some bold decisions and do what he wants to do. And I just have to assume that Kraft would give him that leeway to do that. But I think at the end of the day, Bill O'Brien would stay. That would be my guess.
Appreciate your time, man. Thank you for getting me more on the Vrabel bandwagon. I was, my Mayo thing, I was a little hesitant, but now I'm a little more excited. So appreciate you.